In today's Farm Report, last month the USDA released its Hogs and Pigs report, and the numbers inside were of interest. Cindy Zimmerman with AgriPulse has more.
Hog producers are planning to cut farrowings more than expected this year, according to the latest report from USDA.
As you go forward into June, August farrowing intentions, again, these are pigs that have not yet, sows which are not yet farrowed but will be farrowing later. Producers indicated intentions to farrow 2.9 million sows, which is about 3% below a year earlier. And further out into September, November, we're actually talking about a 4% decline in farrowings at just under 2.9 million head.
However, USDA livestock economist Shail Shagam says that may be because pigs per litter this spring were up significantly.
We did reach a record, 10.37 pigs per litter during March-May, which was 6% higher than a year ago. Again, pointing towards a recovery in the rate of growth in pigs after coming through the terrible times of PED when we lost a very large number of pigs. Some of the producers may have seen this recovery and assumed that if we have a certain amount of capacity in our finishing barns, to the extent that we have more pigs per sow coming out, we don't need as many sows to maximize the throughput going through the finishing barns.
The total number of hogs and pigs in the U.S. on June 1st was up 9% from last year. But with higher production comes lower prices, according to Jim Robb with the Livestock Marketing Center.
So the second quarter of this year on our baseline averaged $69.10 per hundredweight. That's down 38% from last year. We have the third quarter of this year with a little bit stronger prices on a quarter-to-quarter basis, 71 to 73. That's down 35% from last year. Fourth quarter of this year, we have 62 to 65 dollars per hundredweight dress basis. That's down 30% from last year, rounding the number. That'll give us an annual average price down 32% from last year for calendar year 2015.
During a pork checkoff conference call on the report, David Miller with the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation noted a geographic shift in hog production.
In the report, we see some reductions in Colorado and in Minnesota in the breeding herd, along with South Dakota, but we see increases in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, a little bit in Pennsylvania and Texas. But the major states of Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa all being flat at 100% of this year's breeding herd compared to a year ago.
Reporting for AgriPulse, I'm Cindy Zimmerman.
When it comes to genetically modified food crops, not enough education has occurred to assure consumers of the benefits of such technologies. That's according to Darren Kopic of the Agricultural Retailers Association.
The consumer's not at the place where we need to be able to have them to be comfortable in launching these technologies, especially in Europe. But even so in the United States, it's less solid than it used to be.
Kopic says this creates frustration among producers who desire to take advantage of the benefits that GMO crops allow, which in turn creates a more sustainable agricultural system.
It's a more precise breeding technology. You don't drag nearly as much baggage along as you do with some of the other older breeding technologies that are used. It allows you to be more precise in the pests that you're controlling, allows you to make more efficient use of inputs. Water's going to be a really important one in that area. So there's so many things that it can bring to the table and make our system more efficient, more accountable, more effective, better at controlling pests, etc.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
While many producers want to make sure they have enough forage for their operations, they also should be looking at making sure that that forage stays in good condition and avoids spoilage. Emily Wilmes with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office shares some tips on how to minimize spoilage on your operation.
A good forage supply is critical to many livestock operations. No doubt farmers look for any means possible to maximize their forage inventory. Here's a simple question. How much of your forages are you losing to shrink? Now, minimizing shrink is an issue that should be on top of the priority list as it impacts several aspects of a successful farming operation. Priorities may be constantly changing on your farm, but it's time to think about what we can be doing to ensure we're losing as little forage as possible to shrink. It's important to keep in mind that shrink occurs in multiple ways, Stored forage can be subject to dry matter and forage quality losses. Losses of dry hay stored inside a barn are usually not a concern, however, even for barn-stored hay. Losses tend to increase when hay moisture is above 20%. Each mechanism in forage preservation process will probably cause loss of a forage dry matter. Some losses are either mechanical or biological. For haymaking, most of the losses come from mechanical or weather damage, whereas for silage making, most losses will occur at storage and feed-out stages. In general, round bales are usually subject to greater losses than small square bales because they tend to remain outside with no protection between baling and feeding. As a part of good silage management, we should take into consideration the following steps to help reduce shrink. Harvest at correct maturity and moisture concentration. Fill the bunker as rapidly as possible. Pack well and seal the bunker to reduce oxygen infiltration for at least 14 days to allow the fermentation process. Feed appropriate rate to reduce face exposure to oxygen. Unload an average of 2 to 6 inches per day to keep the surface smooth. This will limit aerobic deterioration and will help to reduce any possible spoilage. Discard deteriorated silage, which will help prevent livestock health problems. Reducing shrink is a crucial management project on any farm at any time, so make sure that it is a priority on your farm today and every day. This is Emily Wilmus with University of Minnesota Extension.
If you take care of a garden, lawn, flower bed, or grove of trees, you need to keep in mind that soils are living. Now, Buzz Clute of the University of South Carolina says that should be obvious. However,
we think of soil as two-dimensional, or we think of it as a shovel full of dirt, and we don't think of it in terms of a living entity.
Clute points out 4 principles of soil health to keep in mind regardless of size of garden or field you are taking care of. Minimum disturbance of the soil, keeping soil covered even if your plants serve as cover, diversify what is planted in the soil, and
try and keep a live root in the soil as many days of the year as possible.
So Clute says, for example, many lawn and garden caretakers rake leaves and remove grass clippings to keep their area tidy, but they perhaps could put them to better use as compost or mulch for the soil.
Plants need soil microbes to recycle nutrients and to provide them with essential services.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.